September 2024 will be felt well beyond her last day in the office in mid-April. What I can say with great confidence, though, is that the organisation and the community owe Lisa a large debt of gratitude for the many ways she has made us better. Alongside Lisa's expertise in local government, it is a great testament to her knowledge and skills in the broad areas of public and community health services and emergency management that Lisa is so often asked to be a part of regional or state level working groups and boards. Lisa has been an outstanding ambassador and representative of our organisation in both of her director roles, and on the many occasions over the years when she's kindly stepped in to be the acting CEO to let me go on a holiday. So I offer my deepest of thanks to you, Lisa, and wish you a wonderful whatever comes next after your richly deserved holiday that starts soon. Thank you, Lisa.
Councillor Anea.
I'm also not going to look at you, Director Knight, just in case I start crying. I'm really going to miss you, Lisa, Director Knight. I'm so glad to have had the opportunity to work with you over the last 5.5 years, and I've learned such an awful lot from you in that time. Thank you for everything that you've done in your director roles during your time here. Your hard work, exceptional knowledge, and boundless passion have led to so many positive opportunities and decisions for our communities and for this council, and you will leave a lasting legacy here. Thank you too for the kindness, patience, and encouragement you have provided me with over the years, no matter my role. I appreciate you so much. Good luck with whatever comes next for you. I have no doubt it will be amazing because you are amazing. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Driscoll.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, Lisa, as many of you know, in my professional career, I've worked with many CEOs, COOs, CFOs, and directors, and I've got to say, Lisa, I've put you in right up there as one of the best I've had the privilege to work with. When I was mayor a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go to the ALGA conference in Canberra, and the CEO happened to have a bit of a break at that time. So Lisa and I went up there, and in that conference, we had to see a bunch of ministers and try and put our best foot forward. Lisa, you were very professional there. You were fantastic. I was a new mayor. I felt you guided me very well, and I want to thank you for that, and I think we achieved some good things. I consider you a friend, and I think from a working point of view, you've been totally 100% professional to me, and have taught me a lot, and I think the organisation will still survive without you, but it's going to be a blip in the road. So all the best for the future. Whatever you decide to do, I'm sure you'll do that in a very successful way. And thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone that's spoken. I've got nothing prepared, and as many of you know, I'm not fond of public speaking or any public appearances, but here I am. The last 9 years have been an absolute career highlight for me. To hold the Director Healthy Communities and Director Corporate and Community Services roles has been nothing but a privilege to serve Mount Alexander Shire. I've always loved the roles. I've always loved working in this community and being able to hopefully make a difference to the quality of lives from a health and wellbeing perspective. I will miss past and present councillors very much. We have 2 previous councillors in the room, and I still remain in contact as well with Councillor Henderson. I'm really going to miss you, Darren. We're not quite there, but we're officially breaking up. It's been 13 or 14 years that I've reported to you, Darren, and this has not been my longest serving job, but it's certainly been the best job of my career. And Darren, a lot of that is because of you as our leader. You've been exceptional with the coaching and the mentoring and the support, the 11 opportunities to be acting CEO over the last 9 years. So thank you, Darren. Thank you, councillors. To my fellow directors, it's been a hoot. So I'm really going to miss you guys too. I may turn up to council meetings in the future just to provide some witty banter. And last but not least, to my husband, Massey, who's in the crowd. And yeah, as Darren said, it takes a lot to work as an executive and as a director. Many of you know I travel an hour each way to do this job and have done. So two hours a day to do this job because I love it, and certainly Massey Knight picks up the lion's share of everything else. So thank you for everything, Massey. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Knight, and thank you, councillors. Item 6, public time. Will someone, thank you, Tony, you will.
I'd move we suspend standing orders. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. A seconder. Thank you, councillor Hastwell. All those in favour? Great. Okay. We have a few submitted questions for public question time tonight. So each speaker in addressing the council will generally be limited to one question and allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Shall extend due courtesy and respect to the council and the processes under which it operates. Shall take direction from myself as chair of the meeting whenever I call upon a speaker to do so, and shall not attempt to enter into discussion or debate with council. However, councillors may ask questions of clarification of the speaker. Public question time is therefore minuted. Therefore, you must state your name clearly. Second, state if you are representing a group or organisation. And thirdly, state in a few words what you wish to raise. Please note that as chair, I may cease or reject a question deemed unacceptable under clause 12.1.5 of the Governance Rules 2020. If so, I will advise the speaker of the basis for this decision. Where deemed necessary, I may also require the speaker to leave the chamber in accordance with the Governance Rules. We'll get through the questions that have been submitted in writing first, and then I'll come to the gallery if anyone has a question that has not been submitted in writing. So the first one is submitted by Stephen and Kim Cross, and I need to state that in accordance with subclauses 12.1.6 C, D and K of the Governance Rules 2023, I deem this question unacceptable for the following reasons. C, it is aimed at embarrassing a councillor or member of council staff. D, relates to personnel matters. Or K relates to any other matter which the council considers would prejudice the council or any person. However, I can advise Stephen and Kim Cross they will receive a response in writing from the Director of Infrastructure and Development on the matters they have raised. The next submitted question is from Cheryl Kane. Cheryl, are you here to read this out? Or someone? Yeah. Stand close to the microphone, please.
Thank you. Peter Veen. Okay. Peter Veen Houston is my name. I'm the convener of the Maldon Traffic Safety Group, which is a group that over the last few years has emerged from the Maldon community. of which Cheryl, who submitted this question, is a member. So she's asked that I read the question. Our question relates to the classification of two residential roads in Maldon. The roads comprising Hornsby and Morris Street were identified in 2024 by a Mount Alexander Shire Council officer at the time as a designated link road. The Council Road Management Plan 2025 describes a link road as providing a strategic link between identifiable points of interest, may carry a large volume of vehicles, have a high percentage of heavy vehicles, and a high percentage of vehicles will be travelling the entire length of the road. We suggest that Hornsby Street and Morris Street do not meet this description. They are residential streets, mostly under heritage overlay and not the town truck bypass route. There is a speed limit of 50 kilometres per hour and then 80 kilometres per hour partway along Hornsby Street, which then becomes a dirt road. It is obvious that few vehicles travel the entire length of this road between identifiable points of interest. What, we wonder, is an identifiable point of interest? In late 2024, a council officer undertook traffic monitoring along this section of the road, and a significant number of heavy vehicles was noted. The National Heavy Vehicle Regulator was notified, and as a result, the regulator placed restrictions as to the heavy movement of vehicles on Hornsby and Morris Street between Allens and Reef Street. However, significant numbers of heavy vehicles continue to travel along these roads. As Hornsby and Morris Streets do not, we believe, meet the definition of a designated link road, could the council, as the road manager of this section of road, review the classification of these residential roads, please?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Can I ask Director of Infrastructure and Development, Michael Anea, to respond to this, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Peter, for the question. So in response, the sealed section of Hornsby Street and Morris Street have been assessed as linked roads due to the following reasons. The volume of traffic that uses the roads, which has been most recently confirmed in 2024, as you've noted, that the routes are used as a connection between the Maldon Town Centre and Bendigo via the Bendigo-Maldon Road. And secondly, to your point about the heavy vehicles, the compliance with regard to heavy vehicle restrictions established by the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator is the responsibility of the regulator. Council office will share your concerns with the regulator, as well as with local police who can undertake enforcement matters on heavy vehicles using that section of road that's marked not appropriate. It is also recommended that you contact the National Heavy Vehicles Regulator to share your concerns if you feel that trucks continue to use the roads. But we will provide a report of the instances to the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator and local police to follow up on in regard to their responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Anea. The next question is submitted by Cam Walker. I think Cam's not here tonight, so can I ask Councillor Walker to read Cam's letter, please?
Yes, Mayor. And while Cam and I share the same surname, we're not related in any way. The letter he submitted is in relation to a motion put forward by Councillor Maddock coming up tonight, motion 006/2026, rising costs and impacts of climate change. Cam writes, as someone who works across a range of climate-related disaster fields and as an active local volunteer firefighter, I can see that the economic, environmental, public and mental health impacts of weather-related disasters, including heat waves, floods and fires, are steadily increasing. This is corroborated by mainstream consensus science. Without meaningful coordinated action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with the latest science, countries like Australia will continue to suffer from more regular and costly climate change-related events. It is clear that fossil fuels are one of the key drivers of global heating, that is, human-induced climate change. It seems only reasonable that Council support the 4 points in the motion, urging the Australian Government and Parliament to fully consider the action points outlined in Section 2 of Councillor Maddox's motion, including the call for a climate pollution levy on coal, gas and oil corporations to raise the funds necessary to pay for the climate damage these corporations are causing. A levy on fossil fuel corporations could deliver major sources of new income for disaster response and recovery and resilience building. This would provide an alternative source of funds for state-funded emergency services and hence would assist in taking the burden off farming communities who are compelled to contribute to the Emergency Services and Volunteer Fund. If Council champions the idea of a levy being imposed on fossil fuel companies, it will demonstrate support for farming families and communities who are struggling to pay the ESVF.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'll take, and thank you, Cam Walker, for your question. I'll take that as a comment and note Councillor Walker's observation that we will be revisiting this matter later on tonight as we debate the notice of motion. Can I ask Malcolm Robbins, do you want to read your question now? Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm Malcolm Robbins. I'm a Mount Alexander Shire resident and grandparent, and the subject I'm addressing is very similar to the issue that Cam brought up, and my submission actually includes an acknowledgement of country, but since that's already been done so elegantly, I'll skip that. So basically, my question is, how can Mount Alexander Council help deliver climate justice to our community? The problem is as follows. Every community is paying the price of accelerating anthropogenic climate change while big coal, oil and gas corporations externalise the true cost of their activities, shifting the burden of climate damage onto communities, local businesses and families. It's time to rectify that injustice, and I believe that those most responsible for climate change must adequately contribute to repairing it. Fossil fuel corporations are responsible for around 75% of Australia's climate pollution, but are not contributing their fair share to climate repair. Instead, communities and governments in Australia are forced to pay the price for climate change through increased insurance costs, food prices, and increased recovery costs from storms, droughts, bushfires and floods. This is one of the more blatantly unjust examples of inequity faced by the Australian society and is directly attributable to the rapid anthropogenic climate change resulting from the activity of fossil fuel corporations. Now, on to the specifics of the climate pollution levy, which was brought up in Matt Cam's questions. A climate pollution levy is a just proposal to successfully address these apparently intractable problems. All local, state and federal government levels urgently need to cooperate to 1. Establish a national climate pollution levy on corporations involved in extracting, processing or exporting fossil fuels. Point 2, use this levy to create a climate compensation fund to address the needs for communities suffering climate change damage impacts and households facing rising costs from climate pollution, including funds for First Nations and Pacific peoples. 3, rapidly end all fossil fuel subsidies and close related tax loopholes. Collecting payment as a levy can ensure the flexibility in appropriately targeting funds dynamically to match the needs. Proposed climate compensation fund can be used to deliver the necessary support to climate impact communities and to fund a fast and just implementation of the necessary societal climate change resilience. Recent polling shows around 68% support for a polluter pays levy, and this campaign is already gaining significant traction within the community. Many countries have already put a price on climate pollution and the concept is proven. I ask therefore Mount Alexander Shire Council to actively and publicly support this campaign on behalf of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm Robbins. Thank you. And again, I'll take that as a comment. Thank you. And I'll draw your attention to the fact that we will be debating this motion later tonight.
I might respond to that. In fact, that's really what triggered my question, because I felt it relevant and not unduly off topic. Thanks.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so do we have questions from the floor tonight? Okay, former councillor Machin, do you want to come up, please, first?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers. I represent myself, and I have since 1992 worked or volunteered in jobs that try to change the systems and policies that block action on climate change. I support very much the resolution that Councillor Maddock has put forward, and thank you for doing that. The resolution rightly points out that the people who pay for climate change destruction are mostly those who don't have the power to reduce the impact of climate change. We've already heard how they pay through the other questions. It's also the community structures and resilience that pay. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I work 2 days a week at the front desk of Community House, and I serve on the Community House Committee of Management. I've seen firsthand the stress on the people who are doing all the work they can under the control of the Harcourt Progress Association to help here. And that stress would be a tiny proportion of the stress that the Harcourt community groups are facing. I also see as a board member the stress on our finances, not only directly, but through delaying our capacity to raise our funds otherwise. So what I see is that this is such a classic example of cost shifting downwards to people who can least afford it. So can the fossil fuel industry afford these subsidies? Well, you have to have some pity for them, because I don't know if you know Newcastle, Chief, but if you know Newcastle, it's the largest coal port in the world. And in the last 10 years, I'm afraid with their new facilities, they've had to design them to take into account sea level rises. So I feel sorry for them. But the Australia Institute does an annual survey of the subsidies given to the fossil fuel industries. This last year was $16.3 billion, an increase of 9.4% on the previous year. This is a larger increase than the 7.6% growth of NDIS. The growth in fossil fuel subsidies is driven by the federal government's fuel credit scheme, which costs $10.8 billion. Growth of this scheme is expected to outstrip spending on a range of social services, including NDIS, childcare subsidies, and aged care. So, can they afford a climate pollution levy? Well, yes, they can, but we can even manage it by reducing that subsidy and putting that fund where we need to have those funds. And that's not to say we take the subsidy off farmers, because we shouldn't be doing that, but we can do a lot to charge polluters and to reduce their subsidies. So thank you very much for bringing this, and I hope that in order to spare our communities and council resources, that you support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bronwyn. And again, we'll be debating this later tonight. Yes, do you want to come forward? Yeah.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Susie Burke. Thank you, Mayor and councillors and staff. I'm representing myself. I wanted to also speak to the notice of motion, rising costs and impacts of climate change. And I think it's an excellent proposal. I applaud in particular the motion that the others people have talked about as well, that we call on the Australian government to introduce a climate pollution levy on coal, gas and oil corporations. But what I wanted to particularly talk about as a psychologist is a question about whether it would be possible to put an amendment to the motion to include specifically the term psychosocial when we're referring to the costs and the impacts and the need to have funds for that. So as a psychologist, I sit on the Victorian Government DFF&H Emergency Psychosocial Services panel, and along with 8 other psychologist experts, we travel to all of the shires that have been impacted by disasters over the last few years and are very well versed in the psychological and social impacts of disasters. I've also published in this area on the psychosocial impacts of climate change and extreme weather event disasters on people, on children and adults, and I've been for many years at the Australian Psychological Society as the senior psychologist for disasters. So it's a background that I know very well. The psychological and social costs are so severe that they roughly double the total economic cost of natural disasters, making them just as significant as physical infrastructure damage. Now, I know that you probably all know that, but I would love to have that specifically included as an item in the motion. The Australian Business Roundtable for Disaster Resilience, who has published 5 reports over the last decade, always report over the social costs of disasters as being enormously significant. The psychosocial costs include not just mental health issues like increased rates of depression, PTSD, and suicide, but also increases in family violence, alcohol and drug misuse, stress, short-term unemployment, and all of the flow-on effects that these have on health and well-being of families and communities. I think it matters a lot that we acknowledge these psychological and social costs. So to be specific about what my question is, would it be possible to add into the motion where in the original document it says financial and otherwise, to insert the word psychosocial as being the other costs? And then further down at point 1E, I'm asking whether it would be possible to make that into 2 separate points. So the original text says the proactive maintenance and upgrading of infrastructure and social supports. And I think it would be fitting to have that as a separate point, so that one would be the proactive maintenance and upgrading of infrastructure to improve climate resilience, and the next point would be the proactive investment in community resilience and disaster preparedness and provision of adequate psychosocial support during and post-disaster to protect the mental health and well-being of people and communities. So that's my question. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you. Councillor Maddock, do you want to reply quickly to Susie's question?
Thank you, Toby, and thank you, Susie, and for everyone else who's spoken to my motion. I really appreciate your support and feedback on that. And Susie, I was aware of the changes that you were proposing, and I'm preparing to put them in the motion. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Maddock. Who else would like to? Is that Laurie? Yeah, please come forward. And Max, are you wanting to have a go too? Yeah, and James? Yep.
Thank you all. Did the Mayor and CEO or any other councillors attend the Victorian Local Government Forum on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion, whilst concurrently the council has a policy of abstaining from the big issues? Over 2 years ago, I had identified at a council meeting like this that Mount Alexander Council has no cultural diversity policy or identifiable anti-racism training for council staff. Why could the CEO and Mayor or councillors have attended a forum that focused on one community but chooses to resist any meaningful dialogue on the pervasive silencing around anti-Palestinian racism and other forms of racism that multicultural communities experience?
Sure, thanks, Laurie. Yeah, so I attended a local government forum at Glen Ira Town Hall a couple of weeks ago, which was on a range of anti-racism measures, including anti-Semitism, you're right, and that's declared in tonight's papers. That's published information tonight.
There was more about the fact that we I think it was maybe 2 years ago, the council adopted a policy of abstaining from the big issues, and that seemed to be around the Gaza issue. Also, I put forward a budget submission around a cultural diversity policy, which seems to be just sitting on ice. There seems to be a willingness to work for one community, but not for others.
If I may, thanks for your question. I can speak. So I wasn't on council when that decision you referred to was made about council abstaining from so-called, as you described, big issues.
It's a policy, though.
Policy of big issues. I think that was framed around international issues, if I recall from the press at the time. But I reject the assertion that any of us are working with one community, not another. As for the budget submission on cultural diversity, we continue to work to try and develop programs to address those needs. And if you have a more specific question, I'm welcome to have a dialogue.
Nothing's happened. Sorry, I don't believe anything has happened meaningful has happened in regard to cultural diversity policy. Would I be right in assuming that?
I don't think so, no. And not everything that happens within council is published publicly, as you're well aware. But I'm more than happy to have a meeting with you and discuss these matters in greater length outside of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Max, did you want to address this? It's just that I think I think it'd be better if James went last, if that's okay, Max.
I'm here because a few weeks ago I got an anonymous phone call from Councillor Cordy, and he was lamenting the fact about community involvement in council matters. I know it's sort of the wrong time because there's plenty of people here, but I've come along to show that we're still working together, and to introduce you a couple of characters which some of you are well aware of, and we have. Meetings with the public. So here we have, there's a couple here. I don't want We've got Councillor Pegg, who's a program that's been endorsed by the previous council. And here are some of the characters that have turned up. There's also the press. I'll just range of characters which still get used in schools today, and we have ones for early years, we've got ones for plus early years, and general just going around. And this is all historically based going back to the 1850s. So I have asked the Mayor to arrange a meeting, which he's aware of, to keep going. I noticed there's a couple of vacancies coming up in this council. I didn't know about this one tonight, but I hate to tell you, you're still immortalised, because in the card games that we have for kids, we don't have your name as night, but we have your name as day. So you're immortalised in the netball, and don't think you're smiling because you know about Confuzzle Conundrum as the CEO, and they're involved in some other sporting things. So they carry the council logo. So you two are front and centre to keep on going. So you're not going to get out of it that easily. So, and because there's a couple of vacancies, over there we have the Peg Chaplain from 1851, because we noticed that there's two vacancies in the religious organisations in the Shire. One is the Catholic priest and the Anglican priest. And so the Peg Chaplain's taken their place. So this is a part of more work that we do within the community and historical stuff. So these all characters belong to the Peg Shire Council, which is a neighbour of yours. So that's about teaching local government. So some of your councils and staff may not be aware, but this has been going on for quite a few years, and it's great fun. and we're reaching thousands of people. So have the meeting.
Thank you, Max, Lessa, and thanks for bringing the pegs and levity tonight. I look forward to our further consultations. Are there any other questions from the floor tonight? Okay. And is this about Templeton Street? Yeah, I'm going to excuse myself as a conflict of interest, and I'll hand over to Deputy Mayor Driscoll. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, the mayor's just stepped out of the room. Okay, James, if you could just state your name and the organisation if you representing one, please.
Good evening. I'm not sure of your title. Assistant Mayor, was it? Oh, sorry.
Deputy Mayor. Sorry, James. Deputy Mayor.
Moved, I'm sorry.
No worries.
I apologise. Good evening, Assistant Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers. James McClendon, 26 Campbell Street, Castlemaine. Directly affected neighbour and key representative of the opposing petition on behalf of directly affected neighbours and supporters, objecting to the proposed 25-year lease and development at 65-67 Templeton Street that you will be voting on this evening. I want to be clear. This is not opposition to affordable housing. This is a concern about the decision being asked of you tonight and the lack of information available to support that decision. Council is being asked to approve a 25-year lease at Peppercorn Rent before final designs are available, planning pathways are confirmed, infrastructure impacts are resolved, or full terms of governance and management are transparent. Many of the concerns raised by residents and acknowledged within your own report are deferred to as future design stages. But that is precisely the issue. You are being asked to make a long-term binding decision first and resolve the critical details later. The report states that community consultation has been undertaken and that 80% of survey respondents are supportive. However, the support must be considered in context. Firstly, it was based on a high-level concept, not a detailed or finalised proposal. Secondly, it is directly contradicted by a petition submitted to Council which has received 100 signatures from local residents who oppose this proposal. I think it's approximately 70% of the directly affected residents, and the others, only one said yes, the others could not be contacted. They don't open their doors, and I rarely do either. This demonstrates that there is no clear or unified community consensus and raises valid questions about how indicative the survey findings are, particularly given the relevance on online engagement. To note, not every local resident has access to or uses social media or email as their way of being informed. That said, even within Council's own survey findings, significant concerns remained unresolved, including, excuse me, I've got severe PTSD, and I don't come out in public, so I just need to take a breath, please.
That's all. Take your time, it's okay.
That said, within Council's own survey findings, significant concerns remain unresolved, including building height and heritage fit, overlooking and privacy, parking capacity, tenancy management and construction impacts. Support in principle should not be interpreted as support for this specific undefined outcome. This is the wrong location. There is also a clear disconnect between the report and the lived experience of nearby residents. Residents are being told that earthworks will be minimised, that impacts will be considered, and that full plans will be shared after this decision. Yet the proposal involves a 4-level development with a potential underground car park and increased density in generational heritage streets and increased density in a generational heritage streetscape. Without detailed plans, these assurances cannot be meaningfully assessed. The report also emphasises that risks are being transferred away from Council financially and operationally. However, the physical and social impacts are not transferred. They remain with the immediate neighbours, the surrounding heritage properties, and the existing infrastructure system, including an already strained sewerage network, limited on-street parking, the placement of up to 40 bins every fortnight, and a streetscape that is already under pressure. Importantly, this is not a minor decision or reversible decision. A 25-year lease fundamentally changes the future use of this site while limiting Council's ability to respond to issues that may arise over time. And yet key elements, including design, planning pathway and operational detail, remain unknown. So the question is not whether affordable housing is needed. The question is it responsible to approve a 25-year lease without the level of detail required to properly assess its impact? In its current form, this proposal asks for certainty from Council while offering uncertainty to the community, mostly the directly affected neighbours. A more balanced approach would be to complete design works, provide transparency around impacts, and allow for informed community input before entering into a long-term lease agreement. And sorry, I can't get that.
That's right. I'm going to have to wind you up soon. I'm sorry, James, because
I've got this is in closing, if I may.
Yep.
In closing, this is not a rejection of housing. It is a call for proper sequencing, transparency and due diligence. The current proposal does not yet meet that threshold, and I would like to acknowledge that councillors are here as representatives of the community, not as council itself, but as the voice of the ratepayers who entrust you with these decisions. Council is not a separate entity from the community. It exists to serve it. And in that spirit, I ask you to consider whether this proposal, as it stands, truly reflects the interests and concerns of the people you represent. It is in the wrong location. Vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you for your opinion.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Driscoll. Tony, will you move to resume standing orders?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to move for the resumption of standing orders. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder, Rosalie? Thank you. All those in favour and against? And that's carried. Okay, so 7.1, we have a petition on the Templeton Street housing project, and I simply declare here that a petition regarding the matter included at item 9.3.1 of the meeting agenda tonight was received on the 10th of March 2026, and all councillors received a copy on that date. In accordance with clause 12.2.3 of the Governance Rules 2023, this petition will be considered as part of the feedback received during the community engagement process undertaken for that project, and the decision of council on item 9.3.1 will be communicated to the lead petitioner. So again, we'll return to that later this evening. So we have no committee reports, but item 9, officer reports, and 9.1, communities. Councillor Anea, would you like to introduce this, please?
Thank you, Mayor. With current regional library corporations no longer encompassed under the Local Government Act 2020, all councils currently covered by a regional library corporation service are required to transition their public library service to a new model by 2030. This includes Mount Alexander Shire Council as a member council of the North Central Goldfields Library Corporation, trading as Goldfields Library Corporation, GLC. The purpose of this report is for Council to approve and agree to sign a new constitution for a not-for-profit company limited by guarantee, known as Central Victorian Public Libraries Limited. This legal entity change is required to participate with the other 3 founding member councils, Macedon Ranges Shire Council, Loddon Shire Council, and City of Greater Bendigo, in becoming a beneficial enterprise as prescribed within sections 110 and 111 of the Local Government Act 2020. And Mayor, I will move the motion as printed.
Thank you, councillor. Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Maddock. Councillor Neal, would you like to speak further to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a decision, I guess, that's been coming for a long time, ever since the new Local Government Act came out in 2020, which took away the ability for local governments to be members of regional library corporations, which is what we currently are, along with 3 neighbouring councils. We've been part of this structure, this kind of collective service agreement for 30 years, so since 1996. And it's something that has worked really well for us because it means we can share resources. It means that we can support each other regionally to have library services, or at least agencies, in each of our shires. Recently, for a little while actually, what libraries are has changed significantly. Gone are the days when libraries were just a place you went to borrow books. In fact, borrowing books is on the decline, and people are attending libraries for a whole range of reasons. They're becoming a place that people go for wellbeing support, for social support. It's a place for families. It's a place for older people. I think one of the reasons I feel very passionately about libraries is because they are one of the few free places left that you can go in a town and spend all day and just be as you are. I've had the pleasure of serving on the board of the library for 5 and a bit years, and it's really been a pleasure, because watching our libraries pivot relatively quickly to meet community members where they need support the most, and often to kind of fill gaps that aren't being provided by any other service, is something that libraries are able to do. Obviously, given the success of the structure that we've currently had, we're looking for a way to continue being a collective, so to continue delivering these library services with our 3 neighbouring councils. And luckily, a couple of other regional library corporations have gone first, in more in the city, and we kind of got a really good sense from them what worked and what didn't work so much. The main thing we learnt from our colleagues who'd gone a bit earlier than us was that it was a long and quite challenging process, just in terms of making a new entity and all of the things that that new entity would require. I think importantly, the decision that we will hopefully make tonight will allow us to meet the Local Government Act by sunset clause of 2030. It will enable us to continue to provide a library service across 4 shires, but it will also mean that with this new structure, there's not actually going to be much change seen on the ground. So for users of the library services, it should be business as normal. I think the only thing that will likely change, and I think this is an exciting one, is that the Library Corporation will get a new name. And that I think could be a very positive thing. But for users of the library, there should be no real changes to service. This is just something we need to do because of the changes in the Local Government Act. It has been a really long journey to get here. And I would like to thank Director Knight, who sits on the board with me as our council officer representative, who has been there longer than I have and has done a fantastic job of ensuring that this process keeps moving forward and that we are all aware of what the changes are and what our responsibilities will be. So for all intensive purposes, this is us getting our ducks in a row so that we meet our obligations under the Local Government Act. It ensures that we will still deliver a library service locally and, you know, work together with neighbouring shires as well so that we can all benefit from the collective resources. But it does mean that we will have, hopefully, a very fun new library service name in the future. I'm very excited for this change to come about because we've been talking about it and working towards it for a very long time. And I think some of our neighbouring councils have already had motions come through similar to this, indicating their support for the new entity and the new model. This is our turn to consider if we think this is the right thing for us. And I hope that we all do, because I think public libraries are going to continue being very important in the future. And as a small regional shire, we would not be able to deliver the quality and the quantity of services that our library currently does if we were not in partnership with other councils. So that's all I'd like to say on this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Anir. Councillor Maddock, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll just speak really briefly. I wasn't intending to speak to this, but just that I think Mark Hands has been out at least twice now to speak to us, and it's indicative of the colossal work that happens behind the scenes, both this organisation and the library, to keep these services running seamlessly for the public. So yeah, I'm very impressed at the amount of work and the efficiency of that, and yeah, welcome the new structure.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors like to speak for or against this motion? Councillor Driscoll.
Oh, thanks, Mayor. Look, all councils currently covered by the Regional Library Corporation are required to transition their public library services to a new model by 2030. So we actually do have a choice. We actually could, if we wanted to, choose not to provide library services. But, you know, the library is a much loved institution in our community and much loved by my family too. And every, you know, not every, I guess every member of the community. So I don't think we really have much choice here. As Councillor Anir says, it's not going to change a great deal apart from the name. So I think all councillors should support this.
Thanks, Councillor Driscoll. Any other councillors like to speak for or against? Councillor Anir, you have a right of reply.
I'd just like to briefly talk about the next steps in the process, pending all member councils arriving at a decision to continue. So if that is to occur, a new agreement will be presented to all councils to sign, and this will outline the funding model and responsibilities of the new company to operate as a public library service. All 4 member councils and the new company will be the parties signing this agreement. This agreement will reflect the funding model and principles outlined in the existing service and funding agreement. So again, not much is going to change, except we have to sign a new document. There will then be, excuse me, a consultative process with community to suggest trading names for the company, and a rebranding exercise will take place. Then agreements, licenses, employment contracts, enterprise agreement conditions and assets of Goldfields Library will be transferred to the new company. Winding up proceedings will begin for Goldfields Libraries, which will involve a final audit, and then the new company will begin library service operations. So this is the last in a number of last steps towards becoming the new entity, and that new entity taking over trading and beginning to operate the library services. But this is one of the most important steps because it indicates that we are supportive of this new entity and our involvement in it, and makes sure that we will continue to be a part of that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Let's put it to the vote then. All those in favour and against, and that's carried. And just to pick up on Councillor Annia's point that this has been on the cards for a number of years now, and we have been ably briefed throughout the process. And I think that point is really important, that users shouldn't see any difference in the level of service that they expect and demand from our beloved local library, nor any of the libraries throughout the network. Thank you, councillors. The next item is 9.1.2, Chewton Wesleyan Church usage. Can I ask Councillor Walker to introduce this, please?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. In the 2021-22 council budget, council committed to the restoration of the old Wesleyan church located at 205 Main Road, Chewton, after extensive consultation with the Chewton community. The church restorations were completed in 2025. During August 2025, council undertook significant community engagement regarding the community's preferred usage of the church. And this report outlines the consultation undertaking and makes recommendations on future options for the church and for the broader precinct, including the Chewton Senior Citizens Centre. And the recommendation is that Council 1 notes the results of the community engagement undertaken regarding the use of Old Wesleyan Church located at 205 Main Road, Chewton. 2, approves the use of the church as a publicly available and bookable venue to be managed by Council's venues and events team. And 3, approves the proposed booking rates for the church as per Table 1 in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Haswell. Councillor Walker, would you like to speak further to this motion?
Thank you, Mayor. There's been quite a history around this, certainly predating my time on council. I was actually talking to ex-councillor Henderson the other day, and she was commenting how she and another councillor had first of all moved to dispose of the church and then later moved to keep it and to put it into service. It's had quite a long time. There has been very extensive consultation with the community around this. I think the proposal and the recommendation that it be available to the public is for hire is the very best one, with both either separate to or with the senior citizens. And I won't go through all the charge rates, but there are charge rates as to whether hire one or hire both, whether it's a private entity or a community entity. I'd also note there are still a few steps to go through. There will be some tables and chairs installed. There will be fire extinguishers. It needs an emergency plan or to meet regulations. Those things are under process of occurring at this stage. The consultation was not clear around any name change, so the proposal at the moment is simply to leave the names as they are for the two buildings. I would hope it gets a lot of usage. I think the community does the renovation job. When people came through looking at it, they were so incredibly impressed with the quality of the renovation and the condition the church is in. So hopefully it's a good venue for council going into the future. We note there will be limitations on the number of people that can be admitted, and if there's alcohol served, even less, because there is now disability access and disability toilet facilities. To have higher numbers, people will be required to bring in portable toilets. And I'm very pleased to say at the moment, Disaster Relief Australia, their volunteers are helping out at Harcourt are using it. And if you go and have a look, they've got a very impressive setup with portable showers and portable toilets and use of the car park. So I'm very happy to recommend this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Hastert, would you like to speak now or reserve your right? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I think that Councillor Walker's done a very thorough job of providing some background to the restoration that's taken place and also extensive community engagement consultation around not only the decision to restore the building but also the future usage. As with Councillor Walker, I look forward to seeing how the community takes the opportunity that is afforded by this newly available restored space, and it's a great space, and I think wise use of funds by in such a way that it's much more usable, but it's not an over sort of overly extravagant or specific use focus. So it becomes very appropriate for a whole range of uses. So I'm very happy to support this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Cordy.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, this project's been on the books for a while in terms of the restoration of the council approved the restoration in the 21-22 budget. So basically it's taken 5 years to get it to this stage, but council's really responded to the community's interest in keeping it available for public use. So it's great to see that it's the renovation is complete and it's going to be available for public use. So we'll see how it goes, but great example of the council responding to the community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Cordy. Any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Driscoll.
Thanks, Mayor. The restoration of the Old Wesleyan Church cost the citizens' ratepayers a bomb, as we know. So I just encourage citizens to hire it out and use it and fully, and maybe one day it might, down the track when we get things under control, it might be able to be used for commercial purposes such as weddings and engagements and stuff like that. Because it would be good to get some investment back on our funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Driscoll. Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Maddock.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll celebrate any the creation of any accessible community spaces, and this is a particularly beautiful and special one. So I think it's great. I'm just looking at the table and understand we can revisit fees at a later date once we understand how the building's being used. But we might have just, and I think there's nothing stopping it being used as a wedding venue right now, and it'll only cost either $60 or $42 an hour. So it may be the cheapest wedding venue in Victoria, and I reckon use it while you can. I also, but even though that's a low hourly rate, it can be prohibitive for some community groups to access. So I'm very much looking forward to revisiting these and looking at how it's being used and who might be excluded from that based on this rate. And if there's a way in the future that we can make it more accessible, particularly because the going rate, I'm thinking Wesley Hill Hall, which I understand maybe about a quarter of that, may not be the standard rate for community meetings and these things. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Anyone else like to speak on this? Councillor Walker, you have a right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. I do know of some people already desperately wanting and lining up to be able to rent both facilities. I know one of the old time families is looking towards a family reunion there. I'm aware of someone looking towards hiring both for a birthday party. I do think there would be certainly people interested in having weddings there. Also acoustically, I know of some sort of local acoustic, semi-acoustic bands think it could be a suitable venue for music. So hopefully it gets a lot of use there. And I think there is allowances for sort of groups who are particularly hard pressed with council facilities to look for a different rate, but it is extremely generous rates, and perhaps in the future with commercial entities, something might have to be looked there. But I thank councillors for all their comment and recommend the motion.
Thanks, Councillor. Let's put it to the vote then. All those in favour and against, and that's carried. And I'd add there that Of course, for a wedding or a larger ceremony, users could potentially rent both the church hall and the former citizen centre next door. But I note too that Councillor Maddox's wedding in less than an hour might be ambitious, but sure, you could have a wedding in an hour. Why not? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. So at 9.2, we have nothing under natural environments. So at 9.3, infrastructure, and 9.3.1, as I indicated earlier, to do with the lease of land at 65 to 67 Templeton Street, Castlemaine, and Stage 2 area of Lot 8, 165 High Street, Malden. I have a conflict of interest, so I'll be leaving the room and handing over to Deputy Mayor Driscoll once again. Thank you, councillors.
So just please note that the Mayor with his conflict has left the room. So we have 9.3.1, which is the lease of land, 6567 Templeton Street, Castlemaine, and Stage 2 area of Lot 8, 165 High Street, Malden. Could I please have someone introduce this, please? Councillor Maddock, thank you.
Thank you. This report seeks conditional approval to establish lease agreements over two council-owned sites. The first site is 65 to 67 Templeton Street, Castlemaine, and the second is the Stage 2 area of the big project development at Lot 8, 165 High Street, Malden. You can see these in attachment 9.3.1.1. The report references and should be read alongside the previous council reports titled Allocation of Air Rights at 30A and 65 to 67 Templeton Street, Castlemaine, and Malden and District Community Bank Big Project and the Man Alexander Affordable Trust, attachments 9.3.1.2 and 9.3.1.3. The purchase of Lot 8 at 165 High Street, Malden, was settled in late February 2026. The site has capacity for 5 two-bedroom units, and 2 are currently funded under the Community Bank Malden and District and Community Bank Malden and District big project. The area for the 3 additional units is identified on the site plan as Stage 2. And these units are currently unfunded. The proposal for development of housing at 65 to 67 Templeton Street, Castlemaine, is substantially the same as that supported previously by council. It retains ownership of the property title by council, and Haven Home Safe remains the proposed ongoing tenancy manager for the dwellings. The same yield of 21 homes from the development is also proposed. The key change is the introduction of a second registered housing agency, Unison Housing Limited, to lead funding applications, hold the leases over the land, and to manage the development of housing on the sites, attachment 9.3.1.4. Previously, council approved the allocation of a lease over 65 to 67 Templeton Street, Castlemaine, to Haven Home Safe, and leases over Lot 8, 165 High Street, Malden, was not required. If approved, this proposal will enable the inclusion of 65 to 67 Templeton Street, Castlemaine, and the Stage 2 area of Lot 8, 165 High Street, Malden, in current and future funding applications made by Unison Housing Ltd.
Thank you, Councillor Maddock. Do I have a mover for a motion, please?
I'll also move, Mayor. And I will, I'll just take the motion as read, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, because it's a long one, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second for that motion? Okay, thank you, Councillor Cordy. Councillor Maddock, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Deputy Mayor. We all know that we're really struggling with housing in the Shire, and the number of our residents are being priced out, they're being pushed out, families are being split up, we're losing our essential workforce. It became incredibly apparent to me when I door knocked my ward, and I door knocked almost every door in my ward, just how widespread the effects of a lack of housing were, and they're particularly felt by those in our community who are most vulnerable and least able to adapt to things like the changing economy. So it's very apparent to me that we have a very strong need for that. For that way, I think what's been proposed at Maldon is an absolute excellent outcome. We've had a fantastic opportunity with the Maldon and District Bank big project. And basically we're now maximising that opportunity by seeking to deliver the additional units on this block. So I think it's just a best case scenario here. On Templeton Street, I see it, and this is something that decisions that were made before I came onto council, but I really see it as our council doing everything it can within its power to deliver what we can. When we can't fix the housing crisis as a council in Mount Alexander, that powers with the other levels of government. But what we can do is we might have a bit of land. We might be able to collaborate with some other organisations, and we might be able to deliver at least some housing to some of our residents that need. Now, I'm very cognizant of concerns from the community, and I thank you, James, for speaking to your petition, which I've read very closely, and if I can, I'd like to respond to some of those points. I think firstly and most importantly is what we're making a decision on tonight, which is we're not at the planning phase. We don't have designs. We can't talk about things like heritage because I haven't seen them. I haven't seen the designs. All we're talking about now is allowing it to be leased to Unison. And I take the first point of your petition, James, which is I read to be ostensibly the concern in entering such an agreement when we know so little of the details, particularly around tenancy, who will be using these, what they will look like, how they'll affect heritage, and these things. And I'm in this point, I'm satisfied by point 7 of this motion, which essentially gives us a safeguard. That being, and I'll just give me 2 secs, I'll read it out, resolves that unless otherwise extended by council, should the applicant not secure funding, resolves that unless otherwise extended by council, the chief executive officer and the registered housing agency sorry, I'm not going to this up. There's a safeguard in there, whereas if we can't decide on the final terms, that we're able to exit that agreement. So we're not locking in at this stage. What we're allowing essentially is for Unison to do funding applications, and that's the extent of the commitment that we're entering into tonight, as I understand it. And please correct me, Deputy Mayor and CEO, if I've misread something here. So yes, I would have absolute concerns if we were locking ourselves into a contract or a lease which we didn't have the details of. But I don't. Well, that is not what's happening at this stage in the process here. I think you and your petitioners, for a whole variety of reasons, maybe would like to see this project ceased at this stage. And I'm very much listening to those concerns. But I'll go through a few other of the points as well, that I believe they'll be before us in really substantial ways at future parts of this process, particularly at the planning approval phase, where we will be assessing heritage reports, where we'll have expert advice on whether the designs, if they do come to effect, whether they meet the heritage standards. Also concerns around sewerage will be addressed by Colaban Water at this stage. Likewise, with local character should be addressed in the heritage report. As with parking and bins. As to the loss of community asset, I think that's a really valid concern. We have a building there currently which could be applied for other uses. And I'll lump this into your point 5 as well, which is the environment oh, sorry, no, I won't lump it in. I'll just talk about the loss of assets and the demolition of a building, which is your point 6, which has environmental implications. And I agree with you, they do, and it's taking away an asset that we can't then use for something else. The community needs change, and I think while nothing that we do in this space is perfect, where we need to weigh up what is the needs of the community right now. Are they best served by the building in its current form? And for me, it's the need for housing and the need to house vulnerable people and keep families together. And at least 21 of these, probably more because we usually have more than one person per dwelling. For me, that need is greater than the opportunities and the environmental impacts presented by the building in its current form, and the environmental costs of its demolition. So I've got sympathy for those points, and I'm weighing them, and I'm coming out on the side of housing. I won't speak to your other points now. I will in the future. So around the I'll paraphrase it by an impact on amenity to local residents is a really important point. But I would like to address this at the planning stage, if and when we get there, because we'll be able to speak more concretely to those concerns. So in short, I really thank you for raising this. I understand they're going to inform the design process moving forwards. And I think there'll definitely be space to look at how those concerns have been integrated and addressed in that process. So this is a valuable piece of community consultation, and yeah, I thank you, and I've got confidence that they're going to be addressed moving forwards.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cordy, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
Reserve my right. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors, is there any speakers for or against when the lights come on, please? Councillor Haswell.
Thanks, Mayor. And yeah, thanks for that introduction, Councillor Maddock. I think it might help to understand this particular situation, and I know that I found it helpful in reading the officers' reports, and I can assure you that councillors have had a really rigorous look at the proposal. One of the things that is really critical in this particular proposal is that the conditional lease allows for a significant funding application to take place. So as you'd be aware, this council and the previous council have committed really strongly on principle to promoting affordable housing, enabling affordable housing, and there has been financial contribution in that space. And of course, this council cannot and should not be footing the bill for constructing those houses, those dwellings. So the only way for that to be enabled is for council to partner and to access whatever funding there might be that's appropriate at state and federal level. So the context for this proposal comes from that, and I think I can understand where it can be unsettling, or it can be of reasonable concern to say, well, we haven't seen all the details. But I'm confident that what's been built into this recommendation is that we are looking at conditional approval, not absolute approval. And we are doing this because it allows for a very significant funding application to take place, which, if there wasn't that commitment of conditional approval from council, could not proceed. So I think that's, to me, that's been a really significant aspect to understand, and I'm comfortable with supporting it on that basis. I'd also just like to again, in the footsteps of Councillor Maddock on this one, really one of the very exciting things has been the amount of partnership and commitment around the Maldon project, as well as Castlemaine, but being the ward councillor for Tarrangara, I'm particularly have been particularly involved, I guess, in what's been happening in Maldon, and the fact that the Maldon proposal absolutely builds on what has been identified by the community there through the Tarrangara Tomorrow Community Plan, and that really, in many ways, formed the basis for being able to secure 650,000 from the Maldon and Community District Bank towards that project. So that's exciting, and I think it's a great example of where it takes community and council and partners and external funders to enable any of this to happen. And at times it can be complex. And I think I'm satisfied with the approach that's been, I think, worked through very carefully by officers on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Councillor Walker?
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. I would endorse the comments of both Councillor Maddock and Councillor Hastwell. The importance of social and affordable housing and the steps, and how this is simply a step towards putting in an application to try and get funding. I would note that both Home Haven Safe and Unison Housing Limited are incredibly credible, with a massive reputation, not-for-profits working in this sector. And I think it's very fortunate that we can be working with them, and they'll bring a lot of quality to this should it progress. And I'll also note that there are, if we need it, various escape clauses as well around clawback mechanisms, etc. Hopefully that's not required. I think the team and the people working on this they've built a lot of trust and partnership together. I understand these things can generate concerns, but I also note that the surveys amongst sort of the whole community is giving a very positive response to this, and I would like to think it can be supported and proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other councillors? Councillor Neer?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I feel like, this is something that this council and the previous council and the council before that, this is something that's been really important in terms of trying to find ways to help people have adequate, appropriate housing in our shire, because it's been a problem for a while, and it was compounded even further after COVID. It's compounding even more now. I think we would all know somebody who is struggling with housing affordability, with housing security. I know a number of people who have been forced to leave the shire, and this is where they've got their kids in school, where their communities are. I think it's something that we feel quite strongly about, that we need to be part of the solution for providing housing to people in our communities who need it the most. And that's a whole range of different people. I think something that has made me think a lot, reading, I guess, some of the objections is around this idea that, that by building something like this, we'll be making an area unsafe. And I think that, that sits quite badly with me, I think, because we've got to get rid of this stigma that anyone who is unhoused or is struggling to find affordable, appropriate, sustainable housing is dangerous or that they've done something wrong to get there, because I think more and more what we're seeing is that almost anybody can end up in a situation where they don't have a home, and the impacts on not just their lives but the ripple out effect. I think, as Councillor Maddox said before, just the amount of people, workers and often key workers who we lose, who are providing key services to the community that we need here, that we desperately need here, that we lose because there is no housing, there is no affordable housing. And what is affordable, of course, is different for different people. I think importantly, for me, there's a couple of things I think in this motion that reassure me that this is not kind of it. I think it's really important, and it was important for me to understand prior to making this decision, that this is not just the end of this. There is so much more yet to come. And I think the things that, reassure me down here at 5.1, the applicant is responsible for obtaining all planning and building approvals for each development. Now, we didn't have a planning matter on the agenda tonight, but basically any time anything even vaguely controversial is built, there is an objection process by which the planning application is advertised, and people within the community are able to provide submissions of objection, of support. They are able to come to a special meeting where they address council directly and speak to us about their concerns. And these are concerns based on the designs, based on the planning application that has all that more technical detail in it around heritage, around environment, around building materials, around making sure that through construction you do not adversely disrupt your neighbours too much, because it's a pretty bad way to start by annoying all your neighbours. So I think that is one part for me that I go, they've still got to, whatever happens, there still has to be planning and building approvals. And that is a whole process in itself. And that is the time, I think, that we will be able to more adequately get into those more technical details, many of which have been raised in this petition. And I can understand, some discomfort and fear around not having all those details yet. But I think, understanding that it is yet to come, and just by moving this motion and agreeing to this next step allows us to actually get on with this work. We're not going to do any of that work if we don't do this step. There would be no point. These housing providers, they need to be sure that we are on the same page as them, and we do have to have that true partnership. I think the other bit that really reassures me, and this is in terms, I guess this is kind of addressing that safety concern that, it's neither here nor there really, but I think at 5.4.3, council input to tenancy selection at each site throughout the life of the leases. And that doesn't mean, we've talked about this at length, that doesn't mean that me as a councillor is going to be able to sit around this table and go, my mate needs a place to live, what about them? But it does mean that we, along with our officers and exec, will be able to talk about what we see in our community and what our community makeup is like, and that, for projects like this to succeed, they cannot just be one type of person. And I think often when we think of affordable or social housing, we do think about that kind of stereotype of the more low socioeconomic areas where, there has been significant neighbourhood disruption in the past. But what we do know now is that we don't need to build places like that. The best thing we can do is make a development like this a true community, which means it's a mix of people, like we have a mix of people in our community. And I think that reassures me, because I know that this council, and hopefully the council in the future, and all of it, we know what our community needs, we know who lives here, and we know that while, we are, you're exactly right, so we are representing our community here. We are put here by the people in our communities, but that is a lot of people, and unfortunately it is not always clear. Everyone is not always on the same page, so part of our job is to think about everyone, and it's a really tall order sometimes, because you basically can never make a decision that is going to make everybody happy. but I know how hard we have been working for, the 5 years that I've been here at least. I know how little council land there is for us to actually develop and meaningfully do something with. I know that nobody else is doing it. This is the other thing. It's not meant to be council. We're not meant to be the ones providing this housing, but nobody else is doing it. And so we decided, last council, this council again, that we had to do it because we see the suffering that is happening and it's not good enough, frankly. So I understand the concern, I really do. But for me, I feel like there are safeguards built in for us to work through these concerns at a later date when the planning and the building plans come through for us to look at. And I feel like we will be able to find a way for this to happen and to provide this housing that we need, that we desperately need for years, but in a way that doesn't adversely affect the residents who already live there. So I'm supportive of this. I think it's really exciting. It doesn't mean that we know everything yet because we just don't, but this unlocks that next step. And I think unless we move this motion tonight and make this decision tonight, we're just back to square one and there's still not enough housing, not enough affordable housing. We're going to lose more and more people who are the heart of this town and this shire. And I think we've just got to, I feel strongly that this is the best chance that we have to do the right thing and provide housing in our community that is affordable, that is appropriate. So I'm excited, and that's why I feel strongly about supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Neer. Councillor Cordy, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Deputy Mayor, apologies, Mayor Driscoll. Mayor Hayden. Okay. The decision to enter long-term leases before us demonstrates Council's commitment to affordable housing. We are doing everything possible to create opportunities for more housing. It's great to see Unison Housing involved. They are a well-established and funded housing provider, and they represent the best chance of securing funding for these important projects. You know, the other councillors have spoken. This is important. This is very important. Housing's a critical shortage in our community, so we need to move forward with this. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maddock, you have a right to reply. Would you like to?
I'm good, thank you, Deputy.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, we have a motion put forward by Councillor Maddock and seconded by Councillor Cordy as printed. If I could please have all those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, that motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. I want to thank the councillors for their excellent debate on this issue, and I also want to thank James for his comments previously. Thank you. Could someone? So, Mayor, as you're walking to your chair, the motion was carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Driscoll. So moving on to 9.4, wellbeing economies, we have nothing. So 9.5 under organisation, 9.5.1, the 2025-2026 financial report, quarter 2. Councillor Cordy, can I ask you to introduce this, please?
Thanks for that, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present the finance report for the 6-month period ended 31st December 2025. The finance report is presented to Council on a quarterly basis. This report has been presented to the Audit and Risk Committee on 24th February 2026. The report provides a concise summary of financial performance against Council's budget for the period, including an explanation of any material variances. This report assists in monitoring Council's achievement of objectives in the Financial Plan 2025 to 2035 and Annual Budget 25-26, while ensuring that Council is financially sustainable in the long term. And I move the recommendation as printed that Council notes the financial report for the 6-month period ended 31st December 2025.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Cordy, would you like to speak further to this?
Thanks for that, Mayor. I'll just say, look, I've had a look at the report. It basically outlines that we're tracking along quite well. Some of our expenses are up a little bit, but you know, and our capital spend is perhaps a little bit behind schedule, which is quite typical for this time of year. But everything looks in order, and I'm very happy with the finance report as submitted. And just a shout out to our Director of Corporate Services, Julie Landy, and our Manager of Finance, Keith Caldwell. They're doing a great job. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Councillor Walker, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve it, Mayor.
Okay. Any other councillors like to speak for or against this motion? Thank you, Councillor Driscoll.
Just quickly, Mayor, this report's till the end of the 31st December 25. And look, we're in sound financial shape at the moment, but I've got to say it's getting harder and harder as we move forward. So, you know, we're trying to keep a handle on costs and not increase our revenue, or not you know, in terms of ratepayers, you know, as much as we can, but it is getting tougher and tougher. But we're in sound financial shape at the moment. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Driscoll. Any other councillors like to speak for or against this? Councillor Walker.
Just very briefly, Mayor, endorsing the comments that have been made. We did receive a detailed report. Yes, the climate's getting tougher. Rates increases certainly do not keep pace with inflation, much less the other responsibilities being loaded onto local government. But we are keeping the budget black. And again, I think the financial team have delivered to us a detailed report, and it's to their credit the detail that we do get. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Cordy, your right of reply.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, as I said, it's a very good finance report. I'll just note that it's because it goes to the 31st of December, it's pre the fires, so it doesn't have the impact of the fires in it. That'll start showing through in the next quarter and for the annual figures. But yeah, finances at this point tracking okay, but the impact of the fires not included. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Cordy. Let's put it to vote then. All those in favour and against, and that's carried unanimously. And I just want to add my gratitude to Director Landy and Keith and the team for their hard work and for furnishing us with such a legible and friendly report that was easy for people like me who aren't that good at finances to follow. Thank you, Director Landy. And so another report 9.5.2 is the Council Plan Annual Plan 2025-26 Progress Report Quarter 2. Councillor Walker, would you be so kind as to introduce this, please?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. The Council Plan Annual Plan 2025-26 outlines the actions of the financial year that be undertaken as priorities in alignment with the strategic priorities of the 2025-29 Council Plan. Included in the annual plan are 24 current year actions. It is noted that this is the first progress report for the annual plan, as the 2025-29 Council Plan was finalised September 2020 2024-25, and annual plan actions for 2025-26 were not finalised until November 2025. In Q2 of the 2025-26, 7 actions were completed prior to or by the due date, and all 24 actions remain on track to be completed by 30th June 2026. The recommendation is that Council notes the Council Plan Annual Plan 2025-26 Progress Report Q2.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Do we have a second? Councillor Driscoll, thank you. Councillor Walker, would you like to speak further to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On the progress that council officers and staff and the whole team are doing towards achieving the annual plan during this period. As mentioned, there was a number of activities have been completed. Others are still underway and due for completion. If I recall correctly, I'm just going through it as we speak. I think there might be one, I could be wrong, that is perhaps a little bit behind schedule, but it's a credit to the team about the actions being undertaken in line with the plan that we have set in the focus area of communities, natural environments, infrastructure, wellbeing, economies and organisations. And it's good to see that the progress that is being made in accordance with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Driscoll, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll speak now, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
So this is the annual plan 25-26 progress report Q2. This is the time where actually keep the directors honest, because you can track through here what's being done. So just in summary, 7 actions have been completed by the scheduled due date. 12 actions are on schedule. 4 actions are not due to commence until Q3 or 4. 1 action is behind schedule, but can be recovered in this financial year. So we'll be watching that one like a hawk. No actions have a status of behind schedule and not recoverable. So we're tracking pretty well so far, but and we'll be keeping our eyes on this. But thank you. That's it. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Driscoll. Any other councillors like to speak to this motion? Thank you, Councillor Maddock.
Yeah, I will, Toby. Just to highlight briefly some things, or to congratulate officers on things completed, like the homelessness project. Although obviously we still have homelessness, so maybe we can look at extending that in some way in the future. The local carbon drawdown projects, which are coming into force, and I love hearing little bits and pieces from the community around the things that we assessed as drawdown projects now being implemented in a couple of schools and by a couple of community groups. So that's really great. And of course, the domestic animal management plan. I'm really looking forward to seeing further progress on the childcare feasibility study, the biodiversity study, eventually a planning application for the Malden worker housing project that we were discussing before. Design finalisation for the Mackenzie Hill shared path, and FOGO and glass processing approach finalised as well. There's more I'm excited about in there as well, but I wasn't going to mention everything. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other councillors like to speak to this? Councillor Walker, would you like a right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the others have pretty well covered it. The council plan, of course, so ties in with the financial plan as a mechanism for us as councillors to oversight on how things are going. And I have not much more to say, except things generally are going very good within a tight framework. So it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. So let's vote. All those in favour and against, and again, carried unanimously. And again, thanks to Director Landy and Corporate Reporting Officer Sarah Smith and team for their work in bringing this. And I share Councillor Maddock's enthusiasm for all those extra dot points that we can look forward to in coming reports. So on to delegates' reports. Councillor Hastwell, would you like to start?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just touch briefly on a couple of what I found were standout events that I attended over the last month. So, of course, it was International Women's Day very recently. And as an alumni of the Women Leading Locally program, I was invited to Gender Equity Victoria's celebration at RMIT Story Hall, and a really great address from the Minister for Women, Mary Ann Thomas, but also a fascinating panel of women who have been included on previous Victorian honour rolls of women. So some very stimulating, challenging, and at times conflicting views around where we stand currently in terms of gender equity for women in public life, and it was a great afternoon. And the other one I'd just like to highlight is I attended the VLGA, Victorian Local Government Associations conference on incivility. So as we would be, I think you'd have to have your head in some kind of weird hole not to have noticed the rise of aggression, abuse, and at times misuse, or beyond misuse, lack of respect for democratic institutions and levels of government. So Victorian Local Government Association made that a focus for this year's conference. It was fascinating to have some outstanding presenters looking at the local level, global level, and observing some of those currents, and providing also some practical pointers for councillors and others involved in government around what we might be able to do to bring our communities perhaps back to a state of productive debate. I've got to say, though, that sitting there in a room full of councillors and officers from across Victoria, but also from New South Wales, and I say this hand on heart, that you sit there as a councillor from this shire, and it elicits gratitude that what we have here, I think, at times is absolutely rigorous and passionate debate and conversations across our community. But what we're very lucky to have, I think, is an overall sense of respect and ability to work through difficult subjects. So that was my takeaway, concern about those trends, but also I think that this council and with its community has really kind of upheld a standard and needs to continue to do that. So that was it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Haswell. Councillor Walker.
Yes, Mayor, very briefly, a couple of activities went with certainly a number of other councils, saw there at the Harcourt Apple Fest, also attended a couple of Harcourt community meetings as they're discussing and planning their recovery. Taradale Spring Festival, Alphington CFA held a play as a fundraiser for them. Plus, as I think I mentioned previously, dropping into the Wesleyan Church and saying hi to the volunteers from Disaster Relief Australia. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Maddock.
I'll be fine tonight, thank you.
Any other councillors like to give a delegate's report? Councillor Driscoll.
Oh, thanks, Mayor. Just run through a couple of things. I held a listening post on the 5th of March down in Newstead, as I usually do. That was pretty good. Had about 6 punters this time, which is pretty good. Also went to the Apple Fest, and I think it's got to be one of the. I've been going to that for 30 odd years now. I think it's got to be one of the most supportive ones there. With a whole bunch, lots and lots of people, which is fantastic. And I think the vendor, heaps more vendors too than we normally have. Went out to our neighbouring shire for chill out the other day in Dalesford, which was once again it's a great great event. The Mayor and I met with the CMRT chair and committee member about moving forward with the rail trail. There's a few hiccups at the moment, but they're working on that. The councillors will know that I'm on the Mount Alexander Housing Affordability Trust, and we're interviewing the trustees at the moment, so we're knee deep in that. And I also attended the Newstead flood study last night, and I just want to thank both Philip and Rana and Director Anir for running that. I think they did a fantastic job. It's it's one of those things that there's differing of opinion. We're trying to collect as much information. It's still a work in progress. We're moving forward, and the final officers' decisions will come to us in the next couple of months. But I thought last night was handled really well, and I appreciate that. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Driscoll. Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, just a quick shout out to Blaze Aid and all the volunteers and personnel working on the Harcourt bushfire recovery. Had a meeting last week with the founder of Blaze Aid, Kevin Butler. He's created a fantastic organisation, absolutely amazing. It's a credit to all involved, and yeah, it's sort of interesting seeing the recovery efforts. We're seeing some volunteer organisations sort of packing up and going, but it's going to take years to do all the things that need doing at Harcourt and the surrounds. So, yep, it's no small thing, and our hearts go out to people that lost their homes in that fire. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Cordy. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor. And in fact, I thank Councillor Driscoll for mentioning his listening post, because I should mention I've got one coming up Friday, 27th of March, 9 to 11 a.m, Heron Cafe, Chewton, 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m, Metro Servo, Taradale, and 2 to 4 p.m. at Elphinstone Post Office, if anyone wants to see me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Good to know. Okay, so from me, there's the published list here. I'll just pick a couple out. It was my great pleasure to attend the launch or the opening of the Castlemaine gift again. Huge congratulations to the organisers and all the runners that make that such a special event in our athletics calendar. The Harcourt Business Recovery event was a really important day, and I was lucky enough to be there for a couple of hours and to sit on a panel with Bendigo West MP Marie Edwards and some others, and it was really great actually to be in a forum to answer questions directly from a group of affected business owners in Harcourt and Ravenswood and Walmer, and then afterwards to have some time to hear one-on-one some of the stories of how different people and businesses are responding and recovering, and to hear about their plans. I wanted to represent back to you the sympathies and condolences and well wishes from the mayors and CEOs of the Loddon Campaspe Shire councils at a meeting up in Bendigo, kindly hosted by Mayor of Greater Bendigo, Tom Prince. It was really nice to be in that room with those mayors and CEOs, and the message to be passed back to us that they are not just thinking of us in terms of material aid, and we're grateful to the council, our neighbouring councils, for the material support they've given us, but also the moral support that they've extended to me and to our organisation. I wanted to make that clear to you, and I thank them on behalf of you all. Another highlight for me was the launch of the new permanent stage at James Park in Harcourt, which was, of course, a star of Apple Fest, and I share Councillor Driscoll's enthusiasm for Apple Fest. I've not been going for that long. I've only been going for about 15 years. But yeah, I agree. It's certainly one of the best harvest festivals in the state, and a key event for our shire every year. And it was a massive event this year. I've too have listening posts recently at the Market Building, and so if punters haven't had enough of or want more after Phillip, they can come and see me on Friday the 27th from 11 till 2 p.m. I'll actually be in the Market Building every day next week, or Friday this week, and then every day of next week. So for the days of the festival, of the Castlemaine State Festival, from 11 till 2, I'll be having listening posts every day except for Tuesday, so today week, when I'll be here. I agree. That was a really good night last night. I too want to thank Michael Anir and Rana and Phil and the team for presenting so well and for conducting such a fruitful meeting last night at Newstead, and thanks to Councillor Driscoll too for coming. And I was very lucky to be a judge at Castlemaine Idol this year, and it was the most fun I've had in a long time. And again, congratulations to the organisers at Lot 19 and to all those incredible locals who participated and who participate every year. Some of them actually do participate every year, and it's extraordinary the amount of work that goes in. It just reminds me again and again how incredible the communities of Mount Alexander Shire are. CEO, do you have anything you'd like to raise here?
No, Mayor, I'm happy for you to take my list as tabled.
Thank you, Chief. So now we move on to 11 notices of motion. And much anticipated 11.1 notice of motion 006 2026 rising costs and impacts of climate change. Can I ask Councillor Maddock to introduce this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I would just like to apologise and point out for an issue with the bullet points in the motion that's been circulated, which I'm going to correct in the verbal version of this. But I believe, and I'm waiting to see the live stream version, that it doesn't appear to be corrected on the live stream version either. So I'm hoping it'll be corrected in the minutes when we get to it. I'm happy just to jump straight to my motion, if that's okay, and then rationale. Is that
sure? Yep.
So I'd like to move that this council notes with concern that that Mount Alexander Shire Council, its communities and natural environment are highly vulnerable to climate change related impacts. B, the rising costs, financial and otherwise, including psychosocial, experienced by households, businesses, organisations and communities, including farming communities, in mitigating and responding to climate change related impacts and risks, including I, losses and disruptions directly attributed to local natural disasters, including human life, homes, businesses, income, properties, livestock, infrastructure, natural environments, wildlife and First Nations cultural heritage. II, increasing insurance premiums affecting local households, businesses and organisations, contributing to cost of living pressures and housing and business insecurity. III, compounding effects of housing loss on the broader housing crisis, including broader workage and family displacement. IV, increasing costs of energy bills. V, costs associated with mitigating increased fire and flood risk, including building retrofitting and resilience measures in new developments. VI, personal costs and sacrifices of our first responders and volunteers. VII, income losses and increasing business precarity, especially as experienced by primary producers. C, that council notes with concern, the rising costs of council budgets for public services as a result of costs of mitigating and responding to climate change related impacts and risks, including coordinating responses and responding to community needs during and after extreme weather events and natural disasters. II, disruption to work plans due to diverted resources. III, increasing insurance premiums. IV, the repair and replacement of damaged infrastructure. V, the proactive maintenance and upgrading of infrastructure to improve climate resilience. VI, the proactive investment in community resilience and disaster preparedness through the provision of adequate social supports, including psychosocial support during and post-disaster to protect the mental and social health and well-being of people and communities. D, so that council's noting with concern that existing constraints on local government revenue raising and shortfalls in financial assistance grants means councils cannot address these increasing costs without significantly compromising other essential local services. 2, calls on the Australian Government and Parliament to fully consider A, establishing a parliamentary inquiry into the adequacy of the 2025 National Adaptation Plan, specifically addressing the lack of additional funding for local governments to deliver mandated adaptation responses. B, establishing a national climate compensation fund to meet the needs of communities on the front line of climate impacts and everyday households facing rising costs from climate change. Ensuring the National Climate Compensation Fund includes a dedicated funding stream for local governments commensurate with the scale of financial risks identified in the 2025 National Climate Risk Assessment. And D, introducing a climate pollution levy on coal and gas and oil corporations to raise the funds necessary to pay for the climate damage that these organisations are causing. 3, directs the Mayor or CEO to write to the Federal Minister for Climate Change and Energy and the Federal Member for Bendigo, expressing the above, and for this Council to submit items 2A, 2B, 2C and 2D of this notice of motion as motions to the MAV State Conference to call on the Victorian Government's support and advocacy for these initiatives under their enabling priority Area 9, Resilience and Recovery. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maddock. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Walker. Councillor Maddock, would you like to speak further to your motion?
I would. Thank you, Mayor. As a council, we are committed through our council plan to ensure our Shire is well prepared and resilient and equipped for extreme weather events and disasters. We are also committed to providing climate resilience infrastructure that mitigates the impacts of natural disasters through our climate emergency declaration to managing the predicted increasing number and intensity of emergencies. It was only luck of a wind change that meant that the recent fires didn't reach my family home in Barkers Creek. We were 5 minutes off being impacted. Not surprisingly, me and my family are reassessing how fire risk applies to us now and how much this will cost and which mitigation measures we can afford to pursue, and it's definitely not all of them. The Australian National Climate Risk Assessment reminds us that Australia is experiencing more frequent and extreme weather events due to a changing climate. The impact of these is already being felt by every part of our society. And don't we know it here in Mount Alexander? In the past 5 years alone, we've suffered not only the January 2026 fires, but the 2025 drought, the 2024 hailstorm, and the 2022 floods. Disasters are costing our community and this council dearly. There are direct costs like the loss of life, homes, businesses, pets, wildlife, the costs of evacuation, of repair or relocation. There are also indirect costs, and these indirect costs impact absolutely everyone in our communities. Rising insurance costs, increased needs for heating and cooling and the retrofitting of our houses to be climate and disaster resilient, the increasing disruption of extreme and catastrophic weather to our everyday lives, our health and our well-being, and disruptions to our businesses and our visitor economies. In our house, our insurance has gone up 20% in the last year alone, and I'm aware of neighbours who have already let their insurance lapse due to rising costs. The reality is that without proper resourcing and systemic change, more and more members of our community will be pushed into financial stress, into housing insecurity and displacement as a result of these cost increases. And like so many things, it'll be those who are most vulnerable in our community who will be most affected. And this has big implications for this council too. We don't need the Victorian inquiry into local government's funding to tell us that extreme weather events driven by climate change are significant. Weather events driven by climate change are a significant cost pressure on Victorian councils because we live and breathe the impacts of these costs every day. The MAV notes that a $10 billion fund is required to support local governments and communities across Australia to address climate change. We know that human-induced climate change is contributing greatly to these increases. We know who's most responsible for causing climate change. It's the fossil fuel corporations. And it's these same companies who continue to benefit from billions of dollars in taxpayer-funded subsidies and often pay no tax at all. If we don't get the big polluters to pay for the damages they're doing, it will be our residents and our businesses and our farmers left paying for this through increased levies, increased rates, cuts to our services, or further diversion of our taxes, which should be, and this is our taxes, which should be paying for our kinders, our schools, our health services and our roads. Advocating strongly for the solutions we need and the resources to implement it is vital for building the adaptability and the resilience that we need in this community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maddock. Councillor Walker, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll speak now, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. I note in a couple of the weeks our local newspaper, Castlemaine Mail, has been having some interesting letters debates around climate change. And I have to admit, I'm a bit stunned that people still think it's a figment. The science is in, the science is irrevocable. That carbon emissions from human activity is causing our climate to change. And that's been occurring since the avocation of industrialisation. There's some early evidence, late 1800s, early 1900s. By 1980, early 90s, the famous international conference in Brazil, the evidence was overwhelming that this is what our behaviour is causing. And the fossil fuel industry today is a bit like the tobacco industry once was. The ones who are hiding it, are covering up, are playing diversion games, are playing greenwashing. It is affecting us all. Councillor Maddox caught up on, insurance rates for people are going through the roof and they can no longer afford insurance. Disasters are becoming more frequent and more intense. We're seeing it all over the world. Things are happening. I follow Horn of Africa. I just read yesterday there were 250 people in southern Ethiopia who were killed due to landslides because of torrential rain beyond anything else they've ever experienced before. We're seeing similar here with heat waves, etc. There is now, to adopt this motion is joining in a national campaign that is happening, building around the country. I believe at Sydney Council or another council, Queenscliff or Golden Plains, have adopted a resolution in those lines. I will note Farmers for Climate Action, which are based out of Mildura, they represent more than 8,500 farmers and nearly 5,000 regional Victorians. They've just released a survey which includes you answering questions such as rising insurance premiums and disaster risk are the most important issues in my community. Natural disasters driven by climate change are the most important issues in my community. So there we have a Victorian farming community also raising it, along with urban ones and regional ones. This is something increasingly I think we have to take a stand on. This is an advocacy program, one about public awareness, but two to government saying the people who are responsible for causing the pollution and who are generating mega profits from it are the ones who should be paying to keep us normal, help us normal people survive, because we are going to have to adapt. There's a lot more coming down the line. So I endorse this motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any other councillors like to speak for or against this motion? Councillor Driscoll.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm not much of a letter writer, demonstrator or protester. So, you can write as many letters as you can, but, I already think council does a lot, and I think we cannot do it all, but the council already commits to using its connections and resources to the full extent, which many people appreciate. But having said that, Councillor Maddock, you're writing a letter and asking for more money for our council and other councils. which I think is a good thing. So I would be supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Just any other councillors like to speak for or against this motion? Councillor Maddock, you have a right of reply.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I'll just talk off script a little bit. I think Bronwyn outlined effectively the impact on some of our local community organisations in responding to the fires. I think we've seen an incredible show of support from this council in the wake of the fires, this council from all tiers of government, from volunteers, from donors. It's just been phenomenal. My fear is that as these disasters increase in intensity and frequency, that the support may not be practical in the future moving forward without substantial new resources. It's the community houses have done an incredible job, but and it's not just from Bronwyn. I'm hearing it from further up the line as well, with incredible strains on their budgets. And I think we know that in this organisation too, that we absolutely want to be there for the community, and we turn up. But if it's going to happen every single year, we're going to have to make some really big budget calls. And yeah, look, I worry about the capacity of our state and federal governments to turn up in the way they have for the Harcourt community. It's been fantastic, but yeah, we're going to see more of this. It's going to cost more as a result. I think ostensibly with a motion like this, if we're not saying it's the fossil fuel companies who should pay, then the question is who is it who should pay? I think at the moment it's falling back on the individuals, on the smaller tiers of government, or on government. We need to be asking ourselves, is that right? Is there a better model out there? And I think there's an injustice in the fact that those most responsible are essentially paying the least. I think it's 60% of these large fossil fuel companies pay no tax. Furthermore, they're subsidised on top of that. It's absolutely not right. So I'm very much behind the national campaign. I think it's working hard to address one of the greatest injustices of our age. I'll leave it there. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Councillor Maddock. All right, let's put this to the vote then. All those in favour and against? Okay, so that's carried unanimously. I want to thank Councillor Maddock for your hard work on this. I support the motion. I suppose I just want to add, I suppose my one caution about this is I feel that I agree with the clauses of the motion. It is, of course, individuals, families, businesses, organisations who choose to drive fossil fuel cars, who choose to power their homes through a fossil fuel powered grid, or who choose to, and the motion touches on many really important points around governance and around government in Australia, around funding, around tax, around tax minimisation, and they're all very valid and important points. And this kind of motion is a huge motion. There's a lot in that. I guess in a way, we can think about different ways that we could fund the response to climate disasters, and you draw attention here to individuals and families, and rightly so. I'm not disputing that for a second. You also make the point about local government, state and federal government, and your concerns about how they might have the resources to respond in the way they did to Harcourt in future, and I get all that. It's so in a way like the broader point about the nationalising or socialising or externalising of the costs by those companies. Of course, there's a much broader debate here about how we reconcile this, whether it's through such a measure as this or whether it's through other forms of tax measures. And so I just want to add that I think sometimes when we sheet home all of the blame onto organisations, no matter how rightly or wrongly or whatever. We can sometimes avoid our own agency. And in our shire, I think that a lot of the citizens of our shire have demonstrated over many years since, as you point out, Kyoto and since Rio even, and earlier. I mean, I remember global warming was being talked about in the 80s when I was a kid. And residents of this shire have actually taken proactive individual choices over many years and decades. And I think that's worth highlighting too, that not only do individuals and families bear the costs, but in many ways we can draw some inspiration and optimism from the power of individuals in working together, whether it's in setting up my line or whatever it may be. Anyway, with the risk of blathering on forever about this, I again thank you, Councillor Maddock, for bringing this before us, and thanks, councillors, for your august and reasoned comments. So moving on to number 12, urgent special business, we have no items, nor do we have any confidential items. So at 8:53, I declare the meeting closed and we'll pull up stumps. Thanks, everyone.